1st, 2019 to order at 7 o'clock. Please join me in pledging the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Ken Jones,
Here.
Jeff Guard,
Here.
Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer,
Here.
David Allison,
Here.
David Gleason.
Here.
I just wanted to mention for the record, I don't know if we did the Councilman Meyer arrived for the work session, just a couple
I got
minutes
it,
in.
yeah.
Okay, great. And so appreciate a full quorum of council tonight, council. Approval of the regular agenda, Councilman Allison.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the regular agenda with the addition of Amendment 7A, or Item 7A, under consideration of bids, directing the manager to negotiate with Kendall Ford. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other amendments to the agenda? All those in favor of amending the agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda will stand approved as amended. Does council have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to disclose? Seeing none, communications by and petitions from visitors. We don't have guest speakers tonight. Are there any audience comments regarding agenda items? Okay, seeing none, chairpersons and representatives of boards and commissions. School board representative.
Good evening, Alex Russin, Superintendent of Schools. As you might imagine, the school year is quickly coming to a close. We've got about 3 more weeks of school left. Graduation is on the 18th of May, so if you're available and not out on the water on that Saturday, it'd be great to see you here supporting our kids as they kind of take their next steps onto future endeavors. Had an opportunity a couple of weeks ago to meet with the mayor along with our school board president and our finance director, and it was a nice meeting, very informative, I think, and basically we just kind of provided the mayor with an overview of our district financial situation and some of the work that we've been doing around strategic planning and listening to the community through various surveys and strategic planning conversations, really getting at what the needs of our students are. And we're taking that feedback very seriously and very intently as we plan for the needs of our students for future years. So I think he may provide you with a brief update on that conversation and a little bit more detail later in the agenda. I also did send a proposed 1920 budget today to the mayor and city manager along with the city clerk, and there was no intention on getting that in front of you today. There is a statutory requirement that has us putting a budget before the city council. In statute it references a borough assembly, but the applicability of a city structure applies to that particular statute as well. So we provided you with a proposed budget for what our needs would be for next school year. And we actually have a board work session scheduled for next Wednesday at 6 p.m. just prior to our regular board meeting. So if you're interested and able to hear part of that conversation, we certainly would enjoy having you over at the media center at that time. So I think that's all. If you've got any questions or comments, I'd be happy to try to entertain them at this time.
Any questions or comments, council? Thank you for that budget. I know we used to ask for that years ago, and we used to get those. And so appreciate you taking the initiative and getting it to us. Appreciate it. And I will have a fairly substantial, just a verbal addition to my report. I neglected to capture that that meeting. So thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have anybody online this evening?
Yep, this is Kristen.
Oh, thank you, Kristen. CCMC report.
Yeah, so, my first thing I wanted to mention is that, Greg Meyer is our new board chair, but he's, out of town, and, Councilmember Meyer probably knows more about where he is than I do, but he wasn't accessible, he didn't, have a phone connection, so I'm calling in, one last time. And we did, our board met last week. We have interviewed recruiting firms to replace our departing administrator, Scott Mitchell, but we decided to hold off on using a recruiting firm, and at this point, we're going to plan on entering into a contract with Randall Rainey, who is our CFO, as an interim, and he's indicated that he's willing to do that for about 6 months, which should give us enough time to figure out what direction we want to go in. We have talked about continuing the discussions about collaboration with NDE. And I know that Shelley Wade with Agnew-Beck has been trying to find a time when everybody could get together. So we're working on next steps for that. We do have figures on what we owe for PERS. We've been trying to make payments, but PERS is blocking CCMC, I'm told, for making those payments. They want us to go back to what we owe, or to start making payments on what we owe from July of 2018. But the figure as of right now is about 1.4 million is what we owe in total, which I realize is a big number. And we have, like I said, we have tried to, that number would be lower if we were allowed to make some of those payments. But I guess when I don't know her official title, but Rhea Beadle, I guess is the, helps with paying our bills when she logs on. We're blocked right now for making payments. And I know that Scott and Alan have a meeting scheduled with PERS staff on May 7th. And so they're going to be talking about how can they let us make payments? How can we continue making payments on those arrears? And what's a payment strategy going forward? So having said that, I know that we will be requesting additional funding to get us through 2019, starting in June. We've been drawing down, requesting about $100,000 a month based on what the city budgeted in 2019. We will be asking for additional funding, and I think what we're also working on, kind of thinking about what is our strategic plan for what I would call the near term, which is like the next 3 years. How do we manage this? What do we do on the 3 to 5 year horizon in terms of, are there efficiencies that we can gain with collaborating through NDE? Maybe we would see some of those efficiencies sooner than that, but I'm just trying to break down the planning horizon. And then what is our long-term plan for, I would say, 5+? Do we have a longer-term solution where there's some kind of scenario that looks like NDE moving ahead with what they want to see for their facilities, whether it's for the clinic or for the hospital, and how likely are those funding scenarios? So we are working on those things, and I think the CCMC board welcomes an opportunity to meet with the city council because I think there's a lot of discussion around what is the value of the medical center to the community, and what is it worth to have the medical center here? What is it worth to our fishery, to our community residents, to the Coast Guard? And I think probably it would be good timing to have that conversation and try to have some frank discussions about what is it worth to the community and what is it going to take. So those are my comments, and I am happy to answer questions.
Okay, Councilman Schaefer.
Yeah, this is Councilman Schaefer. Can you remind me what the time frame is that 1.4 million encompasses? Is that back from now, back through when?
I think it goes back to June or July of 2018, but it might go back farther than that. But when I talked to Scott, he was saying that that's why we're blocked for making payments, because they want us to start with making payments on the oldest debt.
Okay.
Any other questions, Council? Councilman Meyer.
So When have you guys started getting blocked from making any additional PERS payments? You know, is that somewhat recent, or has that been going on for like the last pay period?
That's a good question. I do not know the answer to that. I can find out. I think I'm guessing that it's since, December of 2018, but I don't know that for sure.
Further questions, council? Okay, well, thank you for calling in, Kristen. We appreciate it.
Sure, thank you. Take care.
Thank you. So council, consent calendar. Roll call, please.
Yeah. On the consent calendar, David Gleason,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Jeff Guard. The consent calendar is approved.
Okay. Approval of the minutes.
I actually need a motion for
Are
that.
there any additions, deletions, or corrections?
Well, nobody moved it yet.
I move to approve the minutes of 7-18-19 council public hearing and the minutes of the 7-17-19 regular council meeting.
I'll second. But
Yeah.
it's 4-17 for both.
Oh, I don't know what I said.
It's okay.
You said 7, but that's okay. Got it.
I'm going into the future.
It's fine.
Okay, any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved as submitted. Then we have item 7.A under consideration of bids. That's a handout. And that is for direction to the manager to negotiate with Kendall Ford for the purchase of one 2019 F-550 truck.
Mr. Mayor, I move to direct the manager to negotiate with Kendall Ford for the purchase of one 2019 F-550 truck.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Would you like to speak to the motion? Councilman
No, I
Green?
could use some information on it.
Okay. Sam?
Do you have a specific question?
No, just overall, I mean, I guess I know you use it for sanding to,
So this was in the budget. This was a project, I shouldn't say project, a purchase that was talked about. They are currently using the I think it's a Ford, could be a Chevy, 250 to sand and plow the smaller parking areas down here, up here, fire hall, any other smaller areas that they do. It's much more efficient. And then they're also using that to sand streets once they get those smaller areas done, and it's quicker and saving some life in our very old sound truck. So they want to start doing that more, be able to haul more sand, push more snow, and continue to increase the efficiency during snow plowing. So currently, the 250 that is currently being used will replace the Ford Expedition, which is already in the fleets, 2005, pretty trashed. And then the 550 will be used for the sand truck and will also be used to haul all the other equipment, the infrared machine, the chip seal stuff, the trailers with the equipment on it. And either the Expedition, because we also have another 2005 Expedition on fleet, will be parted out and used to keep that one running longer, or we'll sell it at the auction. Bill and Chris are gonna kind of make a decision on that when this gets purchased. Does that help?
yep, thank you.
Other questions, council? Discussion? Oh, Councilman Jones.
Well, I can definitely say that plowing snow and sanding with a 250 it's a small truck for the job they're doing. I've got a similar type operation with one of my businesses, and I've been considering making this move as well, up to a 550 flatbed for my operation. So this is a no-brainer. I appreciate how it's already a budgeted line item, not a big emergency. It was a planned thing in the budget. That's what I like to see when we look at buying equipment for the city, and I'm going to be voting in favor of this.
Other discussion, council? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. So reports to officers, and my apologies, I knew I had left some things out, and then the list has grown a little bit. So I did get an invitation from the superintendent of schools and the school board chairman, and they brought their finance director in to walk me through their financials and a little of the history. And I'll just share a part of that. And then I do have they gave me a trifold that I had them email to me that I can circulate as well, that kind of breaks down their strategic plan and a little bigger picture. But essentially, when the city ran into budget, challenges a couple of years ago, told the schools, you have reserves, use them. We've got a strategic plan in place. Do with what you have while you can. Manage your operations like you can as a city makes its adjustments as well. So I think over the last year, you've been hearing some feedback from the superintendent that they've been drawing down those reserves. They've economized where they can, but they also have a strategic plan that's been built from the ground up from the community on what expectations are. So I asked quite a few questions that council's posed to me about things like bargaining unit agreements, pay increases, adding 3 teachers, and so forth. And as always, there's nuances to those and pieces that, for example, it's not necessarily 3 brand new positions. It's 1 less position and then 3 new ones. So one's actually a replacement. And then there's some restructuring in other parts of staff to help accommodate that change. So it doesn't all show up as just new expense, but it's also not done in a vacuum. It's part of a long-term process to fill specific positions that meet the science, technology, and STEM curriculum goals that the community has said these are the kind of skills and education that we need to prepare students for. Another real interesting piece of that conversation was the credit hours of college preparation coursework. I just did a quick 60 credit, almost 480 credits. So you figure 60 credits for a degree, that's almost 8 degrees, full college degrees that left here in college pre-credit. So as Alex said, he wasn't intending to slide an action item in because as their budget's structured, if city council does vote to supplement that, it doesn't have to happen on a specific date. That can happen during their school year. The schools are somewhat upside down on their cash flow right now. They had a lot of winter expenditures, and then they have grant reimbursables and so forth that will come in later that they don't have the cash for now. And because they've drawn their reserves down so far, they are working with city staff to try to get the $250,000 that council approved into their cash flow as quickly as possible because they're getting pretty tight. And so I know they've been working with Alan on that. And so what Alex did ask for, what the school board is asking for, is $200,000 of supplemental for. So I think in round numbers, we've gone from about 1.9 million down to 1.5 for the last 2 full years. Again, they've drawn their reserves down, and that's kind of where they're at to try to fund their budget adequately and acknowledge their budget challenges, like the flat funding from the state and some of the other little budget cuts that the state's pulling from around the edges of their operating program. I guess for council, the good news is that at least right now, the Senate has put back in 100% reimbursement of the bond debt. We don't know that it'll stay there, but it'll probably land somewhere between there and I think the 50% the House has proposed. So another item along those lines in the Senate budgets, which I didn't have a chance to watch them today, but I did get texts and emails from Bitney that there's a $19 million supplemental for the Marine Highway System proposed by a senator. Another senator had made a proposal last week for $25 million and later withdrew it, but the really encouraging things is that these are coming from Anchorage legislators, non-coastal legislators, and they are talking about Prince William Sound a lot. Whitney said over and over and over the budget supplemental conversation is coming back to Prince William Sound. So I think the city staff, citizens have a lot to be proud of, because I think we are finally getting the message through, and we've gotten to a point where it isn't just us carrying the message, it's the Anchorage businesses and other economies around state that are recognizing the contributions that communities like Cordova make to their economies. So we don't know where it's going to land, but these are encouraging signs, and those are still, I think, our two biggest concerns is this school bond debt reimbursement and the Marine Highway System funding. And it's not, the more pressure we can apply, the better. Let's see what else we got here. So I'd hope to have a letter of support in front of you. I recognize, and I got some feedback from council in some of these last letters of support. It's always best to try to vet letters of support through council first. Really, I'm acting as your spokesman, so I want to make sure that I'm communicating the things that you want to. And especially after elections and whatnot, there can be a little change in makeup in council. And when 5 nods might look like a consensus in one council, might not be those same 5 nods the next one. So I'm cognizant of that, and we'll try to keep get the letters in front of you before they go out. And and I'll have to talk to Susan about a structure for that, because sometimes you get a request for a letter of support for a grant, if not most of the time, right before it's due. So, and I do try to screen for things that I think might be politically sensitive, but particularly letters of support for grants and whatnot, there's only so much funds very often that can go to a community, so we have to be careful about what not to compete with our own city capital priorities. Then I wanted to mention Powell Creek Road did go out to bid this Monday for the Powell Creek Road improvements with a design estimate or a construction estimate of up to $2.5 million. That will have a lot of implications. It's very locally constructible. And I did talk with 2 of our construction firms, and they said they have it squarely in front of their pencils and are working up bids and hope to be successful in that. So that'd be great. And then, see, I gave you a little ferry update. The Northern Edge 19. So this was another one of kind of those quick turnaround where we had requested almost 2 years ago that the next time they hold the Northern Edge exercise, they said, what can we do for Cordova? We requested a vessel visit to Cordova with an open house and a use of our local fuel vendor, partly for their logistics, but also to run some money through our economy. They showed us figures like $15 or $18 million that they spent in communities, 0 in Cordova. So, and the community expressed interest in a site visit. And then the last is we asked for an observer boarding of the boats during their exercises. And so they contacted us last Monday and asked for a list of 4 community leaders that would be available for that visit. And they gave 4 application forms, and there's some fairly rigorous physical requirements and so forth. So I called and talked to the command and kind of communicated, the community's concerns and asked them what their goals were, and basically what it boiled down to is they want community leaderships that's representatives of the community, and they specifically want ones that have concerns or, basically expressed concerns about the exercises. So that's why, and again, it's basically we have to make our way, representatives have to make their way to Anchorage, then they're gonna fly in jets out to their aircraft carrier and have an onboard tour for a good portion of the day and then fly us back. So it's pretty exciting. I can't imagine that every councilman and every city staff and lots of community members wouldn't go, but there's room for 4. So I went back to the meetings when they made their presentations. Councilman Guard had asked a lot of the questions and expressed concerns on behalf of the fishing community, who's been the primary concern with this. And then Councilman Meyer did as well, and being the vice mayor, I felt that those 2 plus myself and Alan Lanning on staff's part was a good cross-section of fairly open-minded representatives. So that's how I went through that selection process. And I've been doing a fair amount of work, especially last night with the Cordova Fisheries Development Committee, who has drafted several commissioners' permit requests, and we've requested a meeting with Commercial Fisheries Director Sam Raybung, and we'll be sending those to him and trying to open a dialogue at kind of a policy level on fisheries. And I've also requested him to come to Cordova, and he's actually trying to schedule it potentially as early as tomorrow. And that will also be packaged as I send those to him with a, he had indicated earlier in the year that he expects that Cordova will have a good Copper River fishery this year because of the good forecasts. And I think it's just a great time to remind him that we also hope that we have a great season and that the board policy is 3 inside closures to start the season. We've been averaging well more than that. So we hope that that forecast and the first couple openers bear that out and that we get back to what should be more of a norm with some very limited inside closures per the policy. So that's what I had. Is there any questions or? Okay, and then a couple of you already made quick comments about the comprehensive plan. So I guess try to email those into Susan maybe, and we can just try to package those and get those to Shelley. And thank you for your participation in that. So Kathy, thank you for standing in for Alan this week and for coming into the meeting this evening. And did you have a report that you wanted to?
I do, actually. I
Okay,
have a
great.
report. We had staff meeting this morning, so I thought I could inform you about some of the things that are going on. But staff has organized some pretty good training that we're going to have through the Alaska Public Entity Insurance. Is that the right? Okay, thank you. May 8th through 10th, which is next week. It's open to city employees. We're going to open it up to the community. It involves a couple different sessions. One is supervisory training that covers a myriad of subjects, including ADA and workman's comp, Family Medical Leave Acts and things like that. And then there's another session that's a little bit longer, and it's titled Managing to Stay Out of Court. And I think it could be, I've heard great things about it. It's a good book. And so the representative from APEI will be coming in and providing this training to us. It is free. So we just are getting the flyers and sign-up sheets out today, but we're encouraging the majority of our supervisors within departments to attend. And so we're hoping that a lot of other people will take advantage of this in the community too. We have 2 vacancies that we've filled. Nolan Burley is taking that place in refuse that was open. And June James is the new receptionist at City Hall. So when you come in, be sure to greet her. The facility team is working on the floors, completing floor repairs over at CCMC. That's been Malvin's major focus of late. The harbor's been, as you saw in the photos today, working on the repairs of floats. I think everybody, do you email the copies? Yeah.
Yes, I was just going to revert back to myself to ask you to circulate those. Thank
Okay.
you very much for.
And I would like to commend the harbor crew this morning for keeping a vessel afloat that was starting to sink last evening, because I have a reputation for sinking vessels on my watch, and I'm pretty pleased that this one stayed afloat. Finance says the audit is going very well, so well that the auditors are digging deeper into our past and cleaning up a lot of things that have not been taken care of in previous years in the audits. And so it's been really beneficial, and I commend Dean for all his hard work. And he's also been sharing and teaching all of us as department heads how to be prepared for an audit every year. So that's been great. Public Works is working on the bill grants and the Second Street grant. The fire department, Paul and Chief Hicks attended a fire arson explosion investigation course in Ketchikan, which was really beneficial. And Paul also said they just received a grant for new CPR mannequins, and these new models kind of remove the chance of human error by the instructor. So, you could be doing the CPR on the mannequin and the instructor could say, oh yeah, fine. Well, these new mannequins will be so that they're going to be the judge of whether or not you're doing it right. And I don't know whether they turn blue and die in front of you,
Mhm.
but they won't pass you unless you do it right. So, and that was all for the grant. All we had to do, Tall had to do was come up with $200. So that was good. Parks and Rec is working on, with DOT on the Skater Cabin Beach expansion and also the RFP for repairing the roof with the insurance company. Planning, as you see, has been working hard on the comp plan, although Leif said with spring, he's had a lot of folks into his office as well, so it's been busy. And finally, I was going to say, we have an opening reception for the Shorebird Festival up in the Copper River Gallery tomorrow from 5 to 7. We'll be hosting Shorebird Central here in the building. And then we've had, May has been full of school events. We've had prom, which was very successful. Senior dinner next week. We have graduation parties scheduled. We have the baccalaureate scheduled. We've had the drama and the choral events, so it's been really nice to have all the school classes in. And then we had 2 concerts and we had outreach for the schools so the kids come in here to hear the music rather than the musicians traveling there. And then as far as the Cordova Center, we had a couple of walkthroughs this past week. Alaska State Chamber of Commerce has confirmed that they'll be here in October for their annual meeting, so that's a statewide conference. United Fishermen of Alaska will be here also in the fall. And then I'm pretty sure, fingers crossed, I should have their sealed application soon, but we'll have Board of Fish in December 2020. And that's all I have, unless you have questions.
Great. Councilman Jones.
So UFA did confirm for this fall?
Yeah, we have their contract and we're ready to go for them,
Okay.
unless they back out.
Yeah, I just thought that UFA had voted on Ketchikan, but maybe they changed their mind.
I have a contract,
Perfect.
yeah.
I was pushing them hard for
Okay.
Cordova, so.
Councilman Baylor.
Do the prom and all of that, do they pay their own way, or is that just the benefit that we give the schools?
No, they did pay, and that's a really good question. And one of the things that I'm going to provide you before I retire is a look at what we've been doing for in-kind and who's paying, and we are actively changing our policies as we go too. And if we see a festival event that benefits the community, but it's a festival that's in the black, we are charging appropriate fees. If it's a benefit to the community, like small business development workshops or something, we are leaving space for discounts and things. So you'll have all that pretty soon, so you can take a good look at where we are with that 5-year business plan.
Thank you.
No, but we should have charged extra for the prom because all their dresses had glitter on and this whole floor was sparkling.
It might not be a bad thing to brighten up our meetings.
Yeah, 6 vacuum cleaning.
And so Kathy, I'm sorry if I missed it. I got off on rabbit trails there for a second, but the state chamber, have they confirmed or?
Yes,
Oh,
we did a
fantastic.
walkthrough with them. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're also gonna rent associated buildings in town, and so the Pioneer is gonna benefit from that, and they're doing catering with each of the vendors that they can find, so
Wow.
we're spreading the money out.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that's awesome, hosting a State Chamber of Commerce annual meeting here. So I'm going to revert to my own report for just a minute because I still missed a couple of items. And one was thank you, Tony and Kathy, for getting those pictures on fairly short notice. It's good to have those visuals, and it reminded me I've actually had a couple of calls. One just today about questions about the North AML dock and what the status is and if it's going to get fixed. And I think I heard that the floats are here, and it's but anyway, it's good maybe from a community perspective too. I think sometimes I know a lot of the maintenance work wasn't real visible in Harbor because it's out towards the end. So, and it's great to have those visuals. And as the fishing fleet shows back up and stuff, it's nice to know what the status of things are. So thank you. And then the other item was the U.S. House of Representatives just passed a large funding bill that includes harbors. And Caleb Freilich he's working with UNCRUISE He's actually representing Uncruise, who's looking at coming to Cordova in 2020 or 2021, depending on when they get their Jones Act waiver that we've written letters of support for. And, but he's, an attorney, and that's what they do. He's from Juneau originally, but works in DC. They represent communities on harbor expansions and upgrades, and he asked is, where's Cordova at? So I just wanted to mention that to council that really, we have a strategic planning process in place. We have, a capital project priority of harbor renovations and upgrades, expansion, so forth. So at some point, probably need to have a pretty focused discussion about where we're going to go with our port and waterfront and how we're going to get there. And generally, that means bringing some resources in and getting staff feedback and support. So I just mentioned that. And with that, I'll revert back to clerk's report.
Kathy, were you done? Yes. All I have is a couple of items that will be coming before you soon. The very next meeting, we'll certify the 19 roll. So Tina has a few reports that she puts together. And it just gives you guys ideas of exemptions and taxable and what our full value is. And then the reason we do that is to set the mill rate, which has to be done by June 15th. So I guess I'm looking at the June 5th meeting for that. Unless some other item comes up or something happens and we wanted to have a special for it, we could go as late as the 15th. But I'm shooting for putting it on the 5th. And that's all I have. I can answer questions.
Questions, council? Okay, seeing none. You have staff reports in front of you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Baylor.
would it be okay to have Dean come up and just ask a few questions? Does that be appropriate?
Through the manager, Kathy?
Yes, we asked him to be here, sorry. We
Okay.
asked him to be here.
Great, thank you. And while he's on his way up, I just want to mention, I did meet with the auditors. They asked me for, questions and feedback. I did indicate that I felt like the city had not had as clear and concise, and I guess that's the word I'm looking for, reliable financials. And I felt like, from my perspective, that was being rectified and had a lot to do with the current management and staff and Dean's input. So I got the sense that they felt the same way.
Good. And thank you, Dean. And
Now
remind
I'm
me,
afraid.
how much longer are you going to be here?
I'm leaving Friday for a week. I come back, and then my final day is the end of May.
Okay.
Me and Kathy will leave the same day.
Okay. All right, well, I was just curious, I know it's important to get somebody to replace your position, and I know applications have been coming in, and I'm just curious on your professional opinion. You're probably the best person to ask this. Are we getting any qualified applicants, and what do you think?
I don't know. I didn't see the 5 that came in that were rejected. So Ellen reviewed them and didn't like what he saw, so he sent a letter to all of them and rejected them, from what I understand.
Oh, okay, you haven't.
I haven't reviewed them, no.
Okay,
I think
All right.
Ellen reviewed them.
okay. Well, that was my hope, that since you were here, that you'd be able to help out with that, sit in the hiring process, and maybe help train, because you've done an excellent job, and just want to thank you for that.
Mhm.
All right, I guess that ends that. That was my question. I was hopeful.
That was easy. Any other questions?
Any other questions, council? Liz here? Okay, thank you. And then you have a harbor master report on page 8. Any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Councilman Baylor?
So at the very late notice, I was the one that asked for pictures, Tony, and thank you for that. And appreciate the work. And, we've got I do anyway, I'm sure the rest of you do too, get comments about the harbor and they're not doing this, or maybe they're not doing that. And I don't go down there a lot, so these pictures really helped. And I don't know if staff would be willing, even if we got email updates. I know we don't need to spend the money to print those, but as they do projects, I would enjoy getting updates, and this is what I'm doing. And And sometimes when I get a little bit of grief, I can pull out my phone and go, look, they just did this, this, this. So if it's not a big issue, if it doesn't create a lot of work for them, I think getting updates with the pictures as they do the work would be great. So,
Yep, thank you. I know it's helped me communicate better when you see a $250,000 expense and then you show a picture the size of a generator, the size of this room,
yeah,
parts on the floor. You kind of, and then you see, oh, wow, we're not talking about a little Honda suitcase here.
yeah, right. So thanks again to the harbor.
Okay, Councilman Jones, sorry.
I guess I just wanted to, if it'd be appropriate to ask Tony a question about the occupancy rate and, well, I guess if you could provide maybe a quick breakdown of the different size slips, and I mean, I've just from being down on the harbor, would it be safe to assume that most of that occupancy comes from the 20-foot and 25-foot slips and not the bigger slips, like
Well, I would
wait
say-
list for large?
I'd say the 30s and up.
Yeah,
Like 40 footers around there, they're completely slam full. So, and then of course, all the bow pickers. So I think we figured out that 10% of the fleet is, well, 10% of our customers are recreational, the rest is all fishing, commercial of some sort.
mhm. But it says here, like, you know, we've got 90 slips available, but all those slips are small and
Yeah,
not
okay.
really
I
useful
guess I
for our
misunderstood what you're asking. Yeah,
application.
along L float, those little 20 footers rarely ever get used up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're looking at more of like 100% effective occupancy on the slips that matter.
Pretty close. If you looked at, yeah, like the 30 footers and up. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And are we doing well for space for trailer parking as everybody comes in and
We are full right now.
you're full?
As of, I think, yesterday or today, we leased our last trailer slip down in the Northville.
Okay.
I have one question. Are there any slips that are not usable?
Yes,
Right now?
there's probably
How
a
many?
handful.
Okay.
Yeah,
And so that probably counts into the occupancy? too,
yeah.
or-
And we have like 3 in the backyard that we're putting back together as we're rebuilding on the 25 to 30 footers. And then there's a few of the bigger stalls, like 50 footers that are, right now, we're looking at how to replace them.
Councilman Jones.
Are you still looking at trying to tackle 40-foot and 50-foot slips in the same method of the 30-footers?
Yeah, similar. That's what we're looking at probably in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, one of Scott McKenzie's floats. Start out there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the ones that are like missing, that got broken half and stuff over the last few years, so
Yes.
it's going to be repaired.
That's what we're hoping to do.
Attention.
Yep.
Cool.
Councilman
I
Bailey.
thought there was going to be one question.
I know. Well, what's the update on the damaged dock? Are we gonna,
Next week.
are they gonna, so they got things,
We have everything we need to put it in, just except the tide.
okay.
So we need almost a 13-foot tide to put it in.
And have we worked with CTC to get a camera down there, so next time somebody rams it?
I'm working with Jason Gabrielson with our camera system that NVE got us.
Mhm.
It may not be this summer, but it's line of sight, and we may have to put a repeater in, and then we'll have a camera down there.
All right. Might donate a game camera, huh?
We could.
Thank you.
I guess one last question for you, Tony. I already know the answer to it, but I want it said around the table.
Right.
So what, do you have a like percentage of occupancy for this, for the vessel haul out facility currently? For the the service?
I could, you mean how many are down there right now?
Well, just, you know, how full is the, like with the electrical plugins, the actual active service shipyard portion? And is there a need for more electrical?
There is. We've actually looked into that, putting another row along Sampson of electrical pedestals. So we have ordered, well, we actually have the meters to put meters in them too, so it's not a standard rate, it would be a metered rate. So,
Cool.
but I couldn't tell you exactly what the numbers are right now.
Yeah, well, I was just down there, it's full.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I know it's full, I just don't know what the number is, but
Yeah.
yeah. And we have, I think, 5 more to do next week.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, any other questions?
Are we done?
Okay. Thank you for your report and for coming to the meeting tonight. Really appreciate it and making yourself available. Okay, correspondence. Are there any comments? Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, I guess, well, on the White Shed Road, the Collins letter, that certainly has merit. And I know when they had, the state was down here, geez, they had about 20 people down here, and they were giving us a preview on White Shed widening, and I remember the guy, he said it very emphatically that if there's safety issues, we want to know about them, and that's what gets the attention of the planners, and that's what gets the funds, and I don't know what we can do to further that, whether we get some pictures of out there. If you got 2 cars in that, you know, there's just not a room, so it is kind of a dangerous situation. I don't know how we could help out, but it'd be nice if we could somehow.
Yeah, so we did get some correspondence back, and then I'm actually through working with DOT on Powell Creek Road and the Shepherd Point, or I mean the Fleming Spit projects. I brought up White Shed, and DOT's been very closely monitoring that road. They've been taking pictures and taking measurements every year, and it's literally been rock solid. The guardrails have been hit, so it looks kind of, and then it's washed out on the inside corner. So they want to do some work, ditch work there to minimize the scour along that stretch. But they said there was a rock fall, so there was some concerns about, stability, but they tried to bore through that and they couldn't. It was so hard they couldn't get their drill back out through.
Oh, wow.
So they have looked at it and they've heard the concerns, and they said there just isn't an issue there. So I don't know
Okay.
where else to take the conversation, but I did want to provide that feedback. So, and I also had a chance to talk to our local maintenance supervisor, because sometimes they tell you a little bit different than the regional maintenance supervisor that's got a budget to manage. And he corroborated, though. He's been out doing the field work and everything, and they've been keeping a real close eye, and they're just not seeing any kind of degradation. So I just wanted to provide that. That was the department's answer. So,
All right, thank you.
other comments, Councilman Meyer?
Do you think we could ask them to put up a sign before on both sides that says like 1 lane ahead or caution 1.5 lane ahead? I know I've seen them down south quite a bit on some back roads that
For
have whole
public
long
safety, I
straights
think.
that have it 1 lane.
Yeah, we can request that, absolutely. Like narrow road or sharp corner, or reduced speed or something.
Just be nice to know before it's
Okay.
another car coming at you.
Okay. Other questions or comments on correspondence, council? Okay, ordinances and resolutions. We have resolution 05-19-20, which is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing amendment to the fiscal year 19 budget in the amount of $124,735. Councilman Schaefer.
I move to approve resolution 05-19-20.
Have a motion, a second. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councilman Schaefer?
As I understand it, it's just cleaning up some issues or some, things left over from the 2019 budget. I do have a question, because it shows that there's an increase in expenses, but then that's offset by additional revenues that weren't accounted for in the budget. And so will those additional revenues they're just in the general fund? No.
Dean, would you come forward, please?
That's really why he came.
So what this is doing, there's a few things that were left out of the budget. A big part of this is transfers with no transfers in, so we're just cleaning that up. The additional revenues came in the ambulance fund. There was no revenue there. So we added revenues, expenses in the ambulance fund, the vehicle removal fund. There was no expenses there. And there was one other one. And then we had some additional expenses in the public works fund, but those were offset by some revenue decreases or expense decreases.
Okay.
But there was one other expense, because
Is it on your, oh.
yeah, it's right here. I got the resolution here. Transfers, ambulance fund, impound fund, and, her building, her roof for the Bedarkie was in there, but that's offset by an increased insurance. So those are the three, if you add up those are the 124,000 that are additional to here, but they also have additional revenue to cover them. So there's really no additional funds coming from the general fund
Got it.
in this budget.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
A further discussion, council?
Yeah, I have one question. The permanent fund earnings projections were not budgeted. What are you putting in there for?
It's kind of just that you don't need to have something there, but it's nice to have something so you just all of a sudden have $100,000 of no budgeted, unbudgeted stuff. So we've put something there just to offset for projections of revenue coming in from the permanent fund.
So now there's gonna be a line item, so you can say like budgeted and then actual
A- a-
next to it?
Yeah, and there was one last year,
Okay,
but so they just didn't get it in there this year. So, and if you look at your budget next time, we did change that to where we split the permanent fund into the two sections of what it is. So you can see the earnings on the permanent fund, and then you have another section that's called central treasury. So you can actually see how each piece is working.
all right.
So we kind of split those two up.
Further questions or discussion, council? Thank you. Hearing none, all those in favor?
This is a roll call.
I'm sorry, roll call vote. Ordinance.
Melina Meyer,
Yes,
Ken Jones,
No.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Okay, we don't have any unfinished business on the agenda this evening. New and miscellaneous business, city manager options, discussion item. So, council, just to preface this discussion, this is not a discussion about Manager Lanning. We know that we've had conversations about him. He still has an active contract, and there's discussions about extension. This discussion was requested by council to recognize that we don't know what the status of those conversations are going to be, and with the manager, involved in the potential for looking for other jobs, thought it prudent for council to at least have a discussion about whether council should be looking at the hiring process. So that's really what the discussion item is focused on. So with that, Councilman Baylor.
Well, I think given the circumstances that we're all aware of, I think we should move forward with putting out an advertisement for a new city manager and test the field and see what's out there. We don't want to get caught shorthanded. 60 days can go by quick, so I think we should move forward and see what's around. His term, okay, yep, that's all I got to say.
Councilman Guard.
We're kind of in the middle of stuff with some reorganization and stuff going on here in the city. And I think if that's going to have any chance of coming to fruition or not, it's kind of a bad time to change horses in the middle of the stream. We may want to look at some kind of extension, see if the current manager who came up with this restructuring plan is available for any extension.
Well, I
on
thought we
this.
weren't going to be talking about current manager. All I'm suggesting is, given the circumstances, I think we should go out for bid for a new manager.
Well, I'd like to finish what I was saying here.
Okay, I'm
Hey, well-
sorry I stepped on you.
Oh, no problem. It was my understanding that we're just going to discuss all options. I'm not,
Yeah, I think
Trying-
that's within the bounds. What I don't want to get into discussion is managers' contracts, or really don't know.
no, I
whether
don't,
he'll extend,
that's
so.
not where I'm going at
Yeah.
all. But I just think we ought to look at all of our options here on the table. And we've waited long enough already that we're kind of starting to get under the gun a little bit here for dealing with stuff. So if we want to keep all of our options open, I don't know what all's open, but we need to start some discussions to figure out what we want to do. And I don't think changing management during the middle of a restructuring is probably maybe not the wisest idea.
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, at our last meeting, we scheduled to have this discussion in executive session with the manager and in an executive session amongst ourselves. So I think we're a little premature talking about it at this point. I think we've all got things to say, but I think we had it on our schedule for next meeting. I think that's the appropriate time to talk about it. I don't think another 2 weeks is gonna make a difference one way or the other, but we do need to have the discussion on all fronts. And, but I think the appropriate time to discuss it is in 2 weeks when we had it scheduled.
Councilman Jones?
I would agree with Councilman Burr Allison that I think that this needs to be a discussion where all parties are present and we can do it in executive session.
Yeah.
And that way we can discuss the current contract as well. And I feel like our future plan kind of depends on how that conversation goes. So I'd like to have that conversation before we have this one.
Councilman Gleason?
I agree with Tom, but I also agree with Dave that executive session is the time to have that conversation because we can't say anything right now. So it's tough to move forward.
Okay, well, we have a next regular meeting's agenda and executive session for that discussion.
Oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that. Was that put on pending agenda
Okay.
last time?
Let's do that.
We'll get
In
it on
pending
pending
agenda,
agenda.
we'll add that there.
That works for me.
Have that. Okay, thank you, Councilman Baylor.
I wasn't aware of that. So that works
Yeah.
for me.
And I know, and this is something that council's been requesting actually for 3 or 4 months, is that we address the pending end of the contract, so
Yeah.
perfectly appropriate, thank you. Okay, the next item, council, is pending agenda, calendar, and elected and appointed officials lists on page 21. And so under pending agenda, we'll certainly put a executive session item on the May 15th agenda for city manager discussion. Councilman Allison?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I don't know that we have to, but I'd like manager or somebody to look up and see, but, you know, the superintendent was here and I know that he did, I think is it in our emails?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he sent me an
Yeah.
email and I
Yeah,
forwarded it to you.
this afternoon. Anyway, they sent their budget, which does include $200,000 that we did not budget for, although our budget only covers half of their year right now, so, but anyway, there's a question about whether or not, if we don't do something by June 1st, does the budget that they submit to the state become approved? And, you know, whether or not we agree with another $200,000 is a whole debate we should get into probably, but if we need to do it by June 1st, we need to get it on an agenda before June 1st. If we don't, you know, if the lawyers and the manager doesn't think we get stuck with locking that in by not doing anything, then that's fine too. But I just like somebody to verify that, and if need be, put that on the agenda for discussion or approval of that school submitted budget.
Okay, so I think that would go to the manager, and then between he and I, we should get that on the agenda if we need to.
Sure.
It seems like kind of a chicken and egg problem because the city is not going to have a lot of clarity on our budget, at least through the state session. There's a lot of moving pieces, big moving pieces there, so.
I almost think that's why this stopped happening on May 1st or has been sporadically happening over the years, this May 1st, June 1st thing.
Yeah,
I feel like it has not been consistent.
but that's a good point and a good question. If it's been submitted to the state, then we want to make sure that the city concurs or doesn't before it becomes part of our budget.
So am I writing it on pending agenda or I'm writing it on?
I think just a note to Alan, just capture that he needs to look into this.
Susan, I wrote that down.
Thank you, Kathy.
And then, oh,
Councilman Baylor.
I didn't- you had your hand up? No.
I'll go for it and then I'll go.
Sorry.
So, yeah, actually, I wrote this down, so hopefully I can be clear to staff what I want. But I'd like to add the agenda, add the City of Cordova Health and Welfare Trust Benefit Plan, specifically Amendments 4 and 5 to the next agenda, and also discuss who has the authority to approve amendments, possibly forming a committee to review and discuss future amendments. So if we could have a discussion on that and take a look at those. I'm sorry, you want me to repeat it? Yeah. So we've got the Cordova Health and Welfare Trust Benefit Plan, that's the insurance for the city employees, I'm sorry. And there's a couple amendments, the amendment number 4 and number 5 that have raised some interest to me and possible excessive cost. I think that should be looked at. And then also, apparently, if I understand this right, that's why I want to have a discussion, is right now you have one person that has the authority to make amendments to that plan. And for me, that's like check signing. You always want to have at least 2 people looking at things. That's why I suggested possible committee. So I'd just like to clarify it on it. I did read one of the amendments, and I guess we're going too far with this. We should do
Okay,
this.
I'm thinking, so probably to get another council concurrence to put it on the agenda, we probably need some background or something, or Alan and I could put it on. So maybe, maybe we could get together, Tom. And I'm assuming that one person is the city manager, right?
What's that now?
The one person who has authority to make those changes. is the
Well,
city
I'm not
manager.
sure on that. You know,
Okay.
we approved this plan,
Yeah.
but he did, I think I did see his signature on some of those. So I'd like to clarify that.
Okay. That's where I was kind of going with it. It might be good to start with Alan, either you or me, whichever.
So it'll be on the
More
agenda
appropriate.
then, or what's the?
And well, then for it to go on the agenda would either be me or Alan or 2 councilmen. I don't know if any councilmen are prepared to put it on the agenda now without having a little bit of background or
I'd
no.
like to
I
understand
would-
a little bit about it first.
Okay,
I would back him up on that.
okay.
I'd be a second
So-
councilman on that.
Well, I think when you get the information, it'll be, and then when we have discussion, it's, you know, I think you'll see where we're going with this. And I don't think it's going to be a 2-hour discussion. It's either, yeah, you agree, or we're fine, so.
Okay.
So maybe it can come back as a report, not an action item, but a report?
I was thinking of an action item.
You were thinking action? Okay.
So we can park it there for now. And I'm just thinking of May 15th, what our agenda load looks like there.
I don't have anything new or
So it'll be,
different.
there's a-
I mean, what did I say? Certifying the role, that's not a very big item.
Okay, there's probably going to be an opener.
You don't have any planning?
16th. 16th.
Oh, Coho, first reading of the ordinance should be on May 15th. Also
Okay.
not a huge item, I don't think.
Oh,
Okay, remind me what we're doing then.
So it's to look at the city health and welfare trust and benefit plan for city staff, and to have an
amendments 4 and
an
5
item
in
to
particular,
look at amendments 4 and 5.
and then discuss who has the authority to approve amendments, and possibly forming a committee or addressing that if it is indeed only one person.
Okay, okay, I understand. So I think in the meantime, it'd probably be good to check with Alan or Holly or the code and see if we can answer the first question of where the authority resides, and then that may advise council's decision or discussion on whether or not to put another check and balance in place there. Other items for pending agenda, Councilman Jones.
I'm not sure if we have any updates on the grant writing process or the build grant or the harbor grant. I guess we're kind of waiting to see if it goes into the state budget still. But I see here on future agenda items, A2 is a need for a federal lobbyist, and that kind of ties in with, you know, trying to get some federal dollars for a harbor. I'd also like, you know, just like to see an update from staff, maybe in June or something, once we get some more answers from the state budget and kind of how we proceed, how the build grant is coming along. I know we went out for a RFP on that to have P&D do a professional package for us. So I'm just kind of curious the status of that. And then also if we've looked into pursuing other grants along with the build grant, like a Corps of Engineers grant and other things like that.
So to summarize, basically an update on the harbor-related grant packages, build, tier 1, any others, just a report for the next meeting.
Yeah, and then maybe part of that would be discussion on looking into a grant writing position to help facilitate with some of the workload regarding getting a new harbor replacement.
Okay. Councilman Baylor.
Just a question, and I won't get into it now, but would it be helpful if I got with staff or you and then kind of outline the concerns?
I think
as a
so.
Summary?
I
Okay,
think it
we'll
would.
do that later then.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And I like to tread cautiously when we contact the attorney, but there may be something that's clear in code or there may not. So, but yeah, I'll sit down with you, take a look.
Yeah, I don't think attorney is necessary for what we're thinking about.
Okay, great.
Anyway, what I got in mind.
Okay, great. Other pending agenda items?
Well, I can tell you that the May 15th work session is that item 7. I think Alan's been working on, he's got a report for you on, I don't know, some research he's done on investment firms.
Thank you. I was just going to mention that. He had mentioned that to me as well, that he'd.
And I am going to put, not strategic, oh yeah, well, reorganization and strategic planning, which had been on an earlier work session agenda, but then we pulled it to have that special meeting with CCMC. So I'll put that on as a second item on the May 15th work session if we get through the investment item timely enough.
Okay, great. All right. I'm sorry, and Kathy, did you capture that build grant? Okay, thank you. Other pending agenda items, council? Okay.
Got ourselves booked.
Good job, guys, of reading the things that are on here and talking about them. That's how we knock things off of here, so.
Yeah, yeah, actually good.
Praise them.
Yeah. Take anything off of them.
Some people add.
Or add, whatever.
Okay, audience participation. Just once again, I'd like to thank Robbie Lewis and Emily Minster for the press for being here for coverage and coverage live and also coverage in the newspaper. I appreciate that, help keeping the citizens informed. Council comments, I'll start to my left with Vice Mayor Meyer.
No comment.
Councilman Jones.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out on this sunny evening. I also want to make sure I put in some props for the streets department. They've been working on 2nd Street the last few days and it looks great. They're doing a great job. I really appreciate it. And yeah.
I get to drive on the streets now. Councilman Allison.
No comment, thank you.
Councilman Gleason.
No comment.
Councilman Schaefer.
I just wanted to thank Kathy for stepping up this week. And also, I really enjoyed the manager's report. I really liked the overview of all the different departments and just having an idea of what's going on and what they've been working on. Thank you.
Councilman Guard.
No comment.
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, echo the comments, and also, once again, the old library museum is really looking sharp, so that's coming along nicely.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Jones.
One more comment I forgot to mention is I just give some props to the harbor department on their hard work on those floats. Those are looking great, better than when they were new. So.
Okay, thank you, council. And we have an executive session item on the agenda. And it's recommendations from the city attorney regarding Beecher versus the city of Cordova. And it would be an executive session because the subjects which may be considered are matters the immediate knowledge of which would clearly have an adverse effect upon the finances of the government.
So move. Second?
Motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll go into executive session.